Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Romeo. Romeo is a game developer and educator who has worked on games such as Independent Games Festival winner Glow Artisans, Microsoft Solitaire for Windows 8, and Dots. He is best known for the Indicate Festival winner Sports Friend.
今天最后一场 keynote 要来跟大家聊聊，在电脑还没有出现的时候，大家是不是都一群人窝在一起玩游戏，一起大笑呢？但在数位游戏出现之后，就常剩自己坐在电脑前，孤单寂寞，觉得冷。所以我们邀请到 Ramiro， 目前担任美国纽约长岛大学数位游戏设计系的系主任，并拥有超过10年的游戏开发经验。最广为人知的是在 Indicate Festival 获选年度游戏奖的 Sports Friends。我们欢迎他来跟我们分享，要如何设计游戏，才能在玩游戏的同时，也能感受到朋友的温暖哦。
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize. I don't speak Chinese at all. So I'm going to have to speak in English. I'll try to speak slowly. If I'm speaking too fast, go like this or throw something at me. Already? Okay. You can throw things at me. So I'm a video game developer, and I'm a professor. I am an independent game developer. I'm a professor at Long Island University Post, which is just outside of New York City, and I'm the director of the game design program there. And here's New York City. That's where I live. I live in the city. I live in Manhattan. I like New York City a lot. You should come visit someday. It's really nice. And when I was thinking about what to speak about at this conference, I thought about a lot of different ideas and how to connect something between my expertise in game development and more general technology. So I thought it was better for me to not give a talk about technology or something that's very, very specific to games. Or about programming. I wanted to talk more about design and how we can use the design of technology to try to bring people together. But let me tell you a little bit about myself really quickly. So as I said, I live in New York City. I teach close to New York City at Long Island University Post. It's a very beautiful campus, and it takes me a long time to get there from my house. But I was actually born in Brazil when I was a kid. When I was 12 years old, me and my family, we moved to the United States. So we lived in Boston for a while, and then I moved to New York City to attend Columbia University. And I was lucky enough that coming out of university, I got a job as a game designer, basically, designing video games. And I've made a lot of games, and last time I gave a talk, I spent way too much time talking about my games, so I'll try to go quickly, tell you about a couple of games. I made this one game called Glow Artisan at a company where I worked. So it was with a group of people. The game is okay. It's pretty good. We ended up winning an Independent Games Festival award, which was something I really, really wanted. So I'm excited about this game, especially because of this award. I ended up leaving the company to become an independent game developer and making games by myself. But while doing that, I end up working with lots of other companies too. So I worked on Microsoft Solitaire, which is a very, very strange project to have worked on because it's a game that's existed for a long time. On this project, I was a UX designer trying to recreate the game. When Windows 8 was coming out, they were trying to make it so that everything could work with the mouse or with touch screens. So we redesigned the game so that the menus and the gameplay and everything. So it was really, really less of a game design job and more of a UX, like user experience and UI design job. So that was a very interesting task. I've also worked on this game called Dots. It's an iPhone game, iPhone and Android. It's a company in New York City. It's not like my game. I didn't create it myself, but I worked as a designer, a lot of ideas and level design and things like that. I've also had a chance to make a game for the Detroit Pistons, the NBA team, which is not something I ever thought I would do. It's a game. It's a long story, but basically I got to be the lead designer on a game that involved filming all of the Detroit Pistons starters like last summer. So, this was about 14, 15 months ago. And as a fan of basketball, it was really exciting to just be at the court with the players. And sometimes I had to, they had to do certain moves while we filmed, and I had to explain to them how to do the move, which makes no sense because I'm really not that good. It was kind of fun and weird. Anyway, definitely the project I'm proudest of is this game called Sports Friends. Sports Friends is a combination of 4 games. There were 4 independent game developers. I was one of them. And we each had separately made these small, kind of minimalist local multiplayer games. My game was called Hokra, and it's kind of like FIFA for the Atari or something like that. So it was it's a 2-on-2 kind of soccer game, kind of hockey, kind of football game. When I made it, I never ever thought I would release it as a commercial project because it's very small and it requires 4 people sitting together in front of the computer or of the TV. You can't play by yourself at all. It's impossible. There's no online play. And I thought, look, this will be a little fun project, and then I'll put it on the internet for free. And what we ended up doing with Sports Friends is that there were 4 of us who were friends living in different cities, but we knew each other from the independent games community. And we took our 4 games and put it into a kind of like Wii Sports. You know how Wii Sports has 4 different games in one thing, but they're very different games? Kind of like that. It's called Sports Friends. And it's been a lot of what I've been thinking about over the last 5 years of my career, which is how to make local multiplayer games, how to use games and technology to actually bring people together in physical spaces. So that's a bit of what my talk is about. I'm going to not only focus on games, it's going to be overall about how we can use technology to bring people together, especially in physical spaces. So there is this idea, there's this fear that everyone is always looking at their phones, and look at these people in this picture. Everyone is in line and they're all looking at their phones. First of all, if I were in line and I was not looking at my phone, it's really boring to wait in line. So it's not like this is a bad choice. Also, they're going to this restaurant called Chick-fil-A in the US. The chicken is really bad there, so I think they're just trying to become less depressed they're probably looking at cute puppies or something. Yeah, so I'm not one of those people who are oh, technology is bad and it's going to kill all of us. But I do think that as designers of technology, we have to consider how can we use the technology to sometimes make people not look at their phones, right? And I think, look, I look at my phone majority of the day, either my phone or my computer screen or my video game screen. That's not going to change. I don't think we're going to, and I don't want to change that. I'm not trying to pull us away from getting people to use their phones. But I'm thinking, sometimes some of the things that we make could maybe make people actually look at each other in the eyes. Because I think there's certain kinds of interactions that you can't get when you're not in person talking to someone, right? And I mean, this is a bit of a scary future, right? There's everyone has their VR headsets, and yeah, that's too much. I don't want to live in I don't want to live in the Matrix, right? I think that's going too far, and I think it's important to find a balance. So once again, phones are awesome. I'm always online. I spend way too much time on social networks. I'm actually kind of hate social networks by now, but I'm not trying to tell you not to do that. I also probably spend a couple of hours a day playing Overwatch, so I am not going to try to convince you to not have part of your life be online. But I do think that as designers, and by the way, Diva is the best. If anyone here plays Overwatch as Diva, Like the way they just changed her, she's so good, and I gained so many points. And this talk should probably just be about how much I love Diva. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. It's Overwatch, and I think that it's important for us to strike a balance as designers, as developers, in like how much are we creating, like making people only look at their screens, and how much do we sometimes actually help people come together. Because I think, I mean, there's some value, right? There's some value to playing games like this, right? It's a circle where, well, it's not a circle because they needed to make this picture look good. But, you know, you're sitting facing each other, looking each other in the eyes. And when I was making that game, Sports Friends, I was thinking a lot about how important it is for me to play online. Like, I grew up, you know, playing a lot of MMOs. Well, not a lot, but some. I play a lot of like online shooters. I have a strong relationship with like my brother-in-law in Overwatch, right? Like most of the time we hang out. He lives in a different city. We play Overwatch together. And I think those relationships are very, very important. And I feel like I remember explaining to my mom, I was playing, I think it was Battlefield 1942. Back when that first came out, and I was explaining to my mom how everyone else in the game was like a real person, and she's like, "What does that mean? Are you like killing real humans?" I'm like, "No, no, no." They're like a real person on their computer, and then she's like, "Well, then they're not a real person, right?" And I'm like, "Well, so I'm talking to you on the phone right now. Are you not a real person on the other side of the phone, right?" Like, I think it's important to understand that, yeah, online interactions, you know, the interactions I'm having with, especially like with someone I know in Overwatch or people you meet, are very important and meaningful interactions. But there's something to people coming together in physical spaces. What I often said when I was making the game Sports Friends was we purposely made a local multiplayer game because the moment you're done playing, the moment you turn off the game, I don't stay on chat with my brother-in-law after we finish Overwatch. But if he's at my house, you know, we're going to keep talking, and then we're going to keep developing a relationship that goes beyond that one interaction, right? So to talk about this, I need to go really a little bit quickly into the history of games overall. And I won't go for too long on this. Don't worry. If you think games are super boring, then, I mean, games are pretty fun. Come on. So there's this guy called Johann Huizinga. He wrote a book called Homo Ludens in 1938. He was in Germany or Austria or Holland. I don't know where he was at that point. Very weird, interesting time to be in that part of the world, as you know, Hitler is rising and all that. He managed to write this. He wrote kind of like the first and one of the most important books from like an academic point of view, talking about games and how people play. And it's kind of like a classic for people who are, you know, professors in games. I'll warn you, it's a little bit boring for some people sometimes. If you want to read it, like, think of it as reading like a philosophy book from the 1800s, because it's kind of written like that. But anyway, in Homo Ludens, Huizinga says that play is older than culture. For culture, however inadequately defined, always presupposes human society, and animals have not waited for man to teach them their playing. So basically what he's saying here is that I disconnected the HDMI cable. Is back? Okay, just cancel the talk or keep it? No. So what he's saying here is that at least as long as humans have existed, we've been playing in some way or another. And like, he believes that because, you know, if you look at dogs, I did not realize that the YouTube video I put up before this talk would be related to what I'm saying. But if you looked at the YouTube video of the cute dogs playing, they're already playing, right? We've always been playing. So chances are that as long as humans have existed, we've played in some way or another. This is a game called Senet. It's an ancient Egyptian game. It's from the 3500s BC, meaning that this game is over 5,000 years old. This is the oldest game that, like, you know, we've been able to dig up and figure out that it's like definitely a game. And I think Senet is still played in some places. This is a very, very old Go board. Go is a Chinese game. I assume you know Go. It's from roughly the 500s BCE, meaning it's, you know, 2,500 years old. chess, another game that's still played a lot. Chess is originally from India. I say India through Europe, 200s to 1800s, because chess has an interesting history where it starts in India, and then it moves to Iran, and in that area, the rules change a bit, and then it moves through Morocco into Spain, where the rules change again, and like in Spain and Italy, they finalize the rules of chess. So chess is a game that's like slowly changed over time, and the reason why I'm bringing up these games and kind of like, oh, this is like the history of games, is that a lot of these games, right, these games that we've been playing for a long time, these card games, and these board games and sports. These are all multiplayer games, right? Before computers come about, we almost don't have any games you play by yourself. They do exist. Solitaire existed before computers, and a few other games. But a great majority of games you play are played like this. There's a circle here. There's a circle there. Here, soccer is not quite a circle, but there's people watching, and games have, for the first, like 4,900 years of games, they were a reason for people to come together, right? They were at the center of a table, and people were sitting around the table and looking at each other. And then computers come about and mess everything up. This is known as possibly the first video game, depending on who you ask, because it's not digital, it's mechanical. So some people claim it's not a video game because it's not digital. It's called Tennis for Two. It was developed mostly by William Higginbotham. That's a fun name to say. In 1958, William Higginbotham had been one of the creators of the atomic bomb. He was some super smart physics professor. He also later became a big anti-atomic bomb person. Anyway, he makes this game in 1958. It's made in the Brookhaven National Laboratory, which is about 30 minutes away from where I teach in Long Island. He mostly made it kind of for fun. They were trying to show this technology that they had. So he's like, let's make this little game where two people play tennis against each other. The next game that some people would say this is the first video game ever because this is actually digital. It's called Space War ! By Steve Russell. He made it at MIT, if I'm not mistaken, 1962. And this was also a game for two people to play against each other. And you could only play these games if you had these super, super advanced machines that only, really rich universities had. So these were not games everyone was playing yet. And then Atari comes about and makes Pong. Pong is from 1972, and Pong is definitely the first big commercial game. Pong was made to be put at bars. So they take these arcades and they put them at bars. And Pong is two-player game. People are playing against each other. And Pong is still, maybe you're not looking at each other, but you're sitting there playing against each other at a bar. It's something that you do, with other people. And then games move and move and move just to choose a random famous game, Super Mario Brothers from 1985. By this point, you're just playing by yourself. And this kind of ties in with the idea that, before computers, single-player games basically didn't exist. So they're kind of a new thing in terms of games. You played with people, and then, online games start existing, and you still play with people, but, we go from, this kind of playing with people, all these people playing together, to this kind of playing with people, right? And it's different, right? There's a difference there. And this is not a critique of online games or online experiences, once again. I love Overwatch too much to say that, but I think it's important to think of what other interactions can we create with games and with technology overall. Let me talk a little bit more about academic things. So this is Douglas Wilson. He's a friend of mine. He's one of the people I made that game Sports Friends with. He's a professor at our MIT University in Melbourne in Australia. And he's the first person, at least, that I heard talking about this concept of dialogic game design. It's a big word, but it's not that complicated, because basically, if you remove the IC, it's just dialogue, and it's the idea of designing through dialogue. And yeah, so design as a dialogue between the designer and the player. And it's kind of this idea, it's taken from this like literary concept of dialogic. Let's not go into the literary concept, but it's this idea that sometimes a game is not just the designer telling the player what's going on, it's the designer allowing the player to talk back to her or to him, right? So it's this idea of like designer and player talking to each other, and the conversation is going back and forth. And then you can move on from this idea of like, designer and player talking to each other, and you can start thinking, what other dialogues can we create in games, right? So there's the dialogue between players, right? Like if you're playing a multiplayer game against your friends, you're probably saying like, hey, good job, or much more likely like, hey, I killed you and I'm like way better than you are at this game, and you should probably uninstall the game, or whatever, right? And then you start thinking, okay, what other dialogue exists in game and really in technology overall. And in games more and more, there's this dialogue from a player who's playing and then streaming what they play to this audience who's watching them play, right? So Twitch is huge in the US at least. I don't know if I actually don't know what the preferred game streaming platform is in Taiwan, but in the US, a lot of people are going on Twitch and watching other people play games. And it's this relationship where it almost feels like a friendship, but it's a very one-way friendship, right? It's a friendship where you're like watching this person who's cool and who is like fun, and they're talking to you, but you mostly don't talk back, right? So it's mostly this like player having a monologue with the audience, other than you can go in the chat and start talking to the player, right? And then the audience amongst itself starts talking, and it becomes this like weird circle of like players talking to the audience, which is talking to the player, which is talking to each other, and it leads me to end up drawing really ugly drawings on my notebook and taking pictures of it. And this audience, I should not fall off the stage, and this audience gets to like interact with the player, right? And that's something that definitely happens in sports. Right? If you go watch a soccer game, they're definitely telling you something, right? They're playing and they're interacting with you. But then you can be this guy, right? And you can talk back and you can say like, you missed that goal, and like, what's wrong with you? So that's this like, this like player as performer, an audience, and interaction between them. I think that's one interesting way to look at it. And then you take even one step farther in terms of dialogue, and you have players talking to each other about a game that they played yesterday. And at that point, then the dialogue becomes like kind of the cultural dialogue you have around, a movie or a book that you read, or like a new show that you're watching, or a sports event that you went to, right? You're talking to each other about the game, even though you're not playing the game. And I think that's an important role of games and of technology for us as like this new cultural medium that's like we're all interacting in. I mean, like if anyone wants to stick around afterwards and talk about Overwatch, like that's a conversation I have. I end up having conversations with people about like, which character is better or whatever else. That happens. So let me talk briefly about Sports Friends, this game we made, and how we try to build local multiplayer. Like to use this idea of local multiplayer games as a way to bring people together. First of all, as I said before, Sports Friends is a game that is only made for offline multiplayer games, so only local multiplayer. And when we started working on this game, just about 5-6 years ago, it was kind of a radical idea. I mean, nobody was doing that. Everyone was like, okay, when are you going to add online multiplayer? And first of all, we're lazy. So we didn't want to do all the work to add online multiplayer. Second of all, we actually like made these games with the concept of bringing people together in mind. And it was maybe a weird choice by us, and maybe we lost a bunch of money by not making online multiplayer, but it was like, it was our intent. That was our goal with this game. And at the same time, I think it kind of built into the marketing of the game, because then people started talking about like, oh, it's that local multiplayer game. It's that game that like you buy when your friends are coming over and you're having a party. And it was cool because this whole group of games a bunch of us were making these local multiplayer games at the same time, and it became kind of part of this like, we became this like rise in like local multiplayer games that was happening around that point, at least in the like US and European market. And I don't know, I wanted to make games like this is how I want people to look when they're playing my games. This is like a cool interaction. These 4 people are all like yelling at the screen or into it. The people behind look like really interested in what they're doing. It just happens that like the 2 people back there who are watching made 2 like other really, really good local multiplayer games that I really like. So it's like kind of cool. It like creates this like community of like players and spectators, and everyone's talking to each other. And the whole idea of like dialogue was happening. I don't know, here's another picture of people looking really giddy and happy playing the game. And even one of the games, there were 4 games in Sports Friends. One of the games was a game that you don't have to look at the screen. It uses the PlayStation Move controller, which is kind of like a Wiimote. And it's a game where basically you want to hold yours and you don't want it to shake. If it shakes, you lose. So you're trying to like hit other people and make their controller shake and not yours. And the interesting thing about this game, which is called Joust, and it was made by that guy, Douglas Wilson, that I showed before, is that even though it's a video game, you're all looking at each other when you play the game. And it kind of builds on this idea of like how to create eye contact and like physical human interactions between people. But to get away from games a little bit and also talk about overall, like, this is a mobile conference. So let's talk a bit about mobile apps and some creation of offline interactions. Before I fully get away from games, let's talk about some mobile games. This is a game called Shot Shot Shoot, made by Erik Svedang, independent game designer from Sweden. And Erik had an iPad, and he tried to create a game where people would actually look at each other. So you don't see the people here, but basically the iPad is held like this, and I'm on this side, and you're on that side, and it's like a little shooting game. It's actually a really, really fun game. But the cool thing about that game is that, it's on the table and we're facing each other and we're playing against each other, but we're looking at each other. I mean, you're looking at the screen, but when the game is over, you look up and look at each other. And a bunch of games have done that since then, but this is the first one I saw that did it. And I think it's like a really, really interesting use of, a mobile device. Pokemon Go, I think you basically can't talk about mobile games without talking about Pokemon Go these days. I think Pokemon Go did a really, really interesting job of bringing people together. When Pokemon Go first came out, I was actually working on that NBA project with the Detroit Pistons, and I was working with the designer, and she was super, super into Pokemon. And then they came out, she started playing it, and I was like, oh, this seems kind of dumb. But I guess I'll install it. Let's see what's going on. And then I just could not stop playing it. And like my wife installed it too, and then she couldn't stop playing, and it became this like bad cycle. And when it first came out, you could go out in New York to like, we went out, the East Village is this area of New York where people go out to like bars and restaurants. And if there was like a gym somewhere, you'd walk to the gym, and there were a bunch of people, Pokemon Go, if you don't know, it's a video game. And you use your phone, and you have to go to physical locations in the world to try to catch Pokemon. And then when you catch Pokemon, you can go to these other locations called gyms, and you can fight against other people's Pokemon. And for probably like the first 2 or 3 weeks after the game came out in New York, no, it didn't come out in New York. It came out in the United States and a bunch of other countries. But in New York, you could go to these locations where there were, where a lot of, not even young people, but whatever, people who are not old. If you went to places where people are under 40 years old, everyone was playing it. And it was just like this thing that brought people together because I'd be walking around and I see someone on their phone and then I tell them like, oh, I caught a really good Pokemon over there. And then they would go. And in a weird way, this game managed to bring people who had no relationship to each other and made us have random conversations in the streets. And I think that was really, really interesting. And then 2 weeks after the game came out, I went on a trip to a lovely country called Taiwan. And the game was not out here. And I couldn't catch any Pokemon. And I was so upset, and there was nothing to do, and I was bored. And I ate way, way, way too many pork buns, and it was not good. Drank too much papaya milk. I was trying to get past my lack of Pokemon. And then I went to Japan, and the game had just come out in Japan too. And like these are pictures that I took while in Japan. And there was just like one park where this, you can't quite see, this is a little bit dark here, but that's a picture of a bunch of people running to a new location because someone says there's a Pokemon over there, and there's like 30 people like running away with their phones. And like a little bit of it was like weird and depressing and felt like bad futuristic movie, but it was so cool. I was super into it, and I just ran with them. I was just like, yeah, where's the Pokemon? Let's do it. I'm gonna fall off the stage, sorry. So Pokemon Go, I think, is actually a really, really good application of using technology to bring people together in a very innovative way. Just to make it super clear, Pokemon Go is using ideas that have been used in a lot of other games. It's not the first game to do this. It turns out that if you want a game to be successful in a way that like will bring all of New York City together and get everyone to play it, you need to have Pokemon in the game because everyone loves catching Pokemon. So it was the first game to do this in the right way, which was tie it with a very, very, very famous brand. So beyond games, like what other applications maybe bring people together, right? Obviously, dating apps, right? Like dating applications, these are ways for people to come together, right? And I don't know that this is like super innovative to be like, hey, we came up with this great idea, like people like to have sex. It's like, yeah, cool, okay, we knew that. so yeah, but okay, they're doing it. People are coming together, dating apps, sure. There's another thing that people try to do to be like, oh, we know what to do. Let's add like social interactions to our app, right? I don't know if you use Venmo in Taiwan. Venmo is very, very big in the US. It's basically a way to send money to your friends. It's kind of like PayPal was at first, now Venmo is big. And every time you do it, they want you to write what you're paying them for, and then it sends it to all your friends. So it's basically this idea of like, let's create this online social interaction in which everyone knows how you paid your friends some money you owe them. And it's like super stupid, and I hate it. I hate the concept of forced social interactions. I mean, like, this is like on Amazon. It's like, I just bought 4 cups, like glasses, so I can drink water. Do you want to go on Twitter and tell your friends? It's like, no, I don't want to tell my friends that. That's dumb. But I mean, like, I understand why Amazon does it, because probably 0.1% of people tell their friends, and then Amazon sells more stuff. So I think Amazon is very intelligent to be doing it. I think the people who click on those buttons are dumb. Unless if one of you clicked on that button, you did it very well. Good job. Very, very quick story, even though I'm almost out of time. Venmo is the way that people can send money to each other in the US, right? This story came out actually a year or 2 ago from the University of Columbia, where I went to university, but much, much after I finished there, that there was this one guy who got arrested and went to jail because he was selling drugs on campus. Turns out everyone was paying him using Venmo, and they were making the payments public. So it became public, all the people who bought drugs from this one guy. That is super dumb. Like, I already don't like this, but if you're buying drugs, do not make it public. Anyway, also if you're buying glasses, please don't tell me. I don't care. So what about social networks, right? What about chatting apps? There. whatever, Facebook, Twitter, Line, WhatsApp. It's social, right? These are social interactions. I don't disagree, and it's a big part of how we communicate with each other. And I don't want to discount, and these are a bit different. You know, like I used Twitter a lot for a long time. I'm currently using it a little bit less, probably just because I play too much Overwatch. There's no time to open Twitter. I use WhatsApp. My father still lives in Brazil. I can call him from the streets of Taiwan, or I can send him a picture from the streets of Taiwan to Brazil. That's awesome. That's amazing, and that's a very important interaction. I think it's important for us to also think of what other interactions beyond online interaction, how can we create offline interactions? I'm going to disappoint you here and tell you that I don't know the answer. So I'm not here to tell you oh, just do this, and then everyone will come together. But I think it's possible. I mean, I think with some of the games I showed, with what Pokemon Go is doing, people are managing to come together. There are meeting apps. I don't know if you use Meetup here. It was very, very big in the US about 8 years ago. It's less big now. But it's just a place where you can go and people arrange meetings. Maybe, a meeting for all the people who want to watch the the Boston Celtics game going on tonight. We're meeting at this bar. Come here, and you can go online and look it up. Or I don't know, a meeting for people who like to, to knit, make scarves together, and people come together and make scarves. Great, good job. It's not that innovative, but it works and it brings people together. I think that's interesting. I think couch surfing is a cool concept. I don't know if you know about couch surfing. I've never actually used it, but I have friends who used it. It's this app or website too, where if you're going to a new city, you look on couch surfing, and there are people who say, you can sleep on my couch for free. And then it's a way of meeting new people, and people who want to meet travelers will just put their place up on couch surfing. It's kind of like Airbnb for people who don't like to make money. But I think it's a cool idea because it's a way of bringing people together. So I don't know, mostly with this talk, I wanted you to think about, as designers, as developers, we have a lot of power over what people do with their lives. And even though there are lots of different ways to make people come together, there is something nice about physical, in-person, look each other in the eye interactions. And I hope that more developers consider that. Obviously, it's not going to make sense for everyone. I'm not saying oh, you're making a cloud storage application. You must make it so that people have to come together and touch hands to put things on the cloud, right? That's stupid. Don't make stupid things, but do think about how you can possibly bring people together more and more. Because I think this is, it's cooler than this. Even though this is kind of cool in a sci-fi way. But I don't know, when I'm an old person and I'm want to hang out with my friends, I hope that it's less of this and more of this, right? Just people in a park looking at each other and talking to each other. And the phones are not going away, right? If they're going away, it's just because they're going to get put into our brains. So screens are not going away, technology is not going away, and technology is great and it's amazing and I love it, but let's consider also how to use the technology to also bring people together in the real world. Thank you. That's me in the non-real world.
谢谢 Professor 有趣的演讲。现在是 Q&A 时间，用英文跟中文发问都可以。
Hi, Professor Ramiro. And I want to ask you about, you said that you develop game for making people getting closer. And do you have a dream in the future about the game?
No. I mean, when you say a dream, I don't know if you're talking about my personal, oh, I want to make this game dream, or my dream for games overall. I'm going to choose to answer the second question because I think it's a more interesting answer. And like my dream is that, like for games especially, is that people keep making as many games that are as different from each other as possible. I hate the concept of when people are like, oh, this kind of game is bad and nobody should make it. Or like this game is destroying society because people are playing, I don't know, like World of Warcraft and never stop playing and playing too much. Or, I think that like I want the biggest variety of games possible. And like, I think that's true for technology overall. Like, I think variety is good. So like, I think everyone should try to make things that are as like far away from each other as possible so that we have more options. And especially if you're like younger and if you're a student and you're a developer and you have skills and you can make your own things, make weird stuff. Make weird stuff now, because like once you have a job, your boss is not going to let you make anything strange and weird. So I hope that people, and like this is not just for games, but for technology and overall design, right? If you're designing things, if you're making things, just make new things, especially if you don't need to make money from those things. Because believe me, once you need to make money, you're going to make a lot of really boring stuff. So make stuff that's like weird and crazy now. So yeah, that's what I hope for games and technology, that people make just really weird stuff.
I was
going to say I can just show like 2 minutes of movies of puppies again. So if you don't want to ask questions, we can do, maybe we can do both.
因为我英文不好，所以想用中文问。我想问那个教授是说，任天堂新的游戏主机 Nintendo Switch， 它主打的是一个随身携带跟就是可以就是像教授讲的，可以就是聚在一起玩游戏。他想问他这是一个新的方式来达到就是教授他所希望的是大家一起聚在一起玩游戏，一起分享心情那样的，他说是一个好的方式这样。
Did you say something about the Nintendo Switch? It's so good. Like, I have it in my hotel room, and when you have to fly from New York to Taiwan, and you can just play like Mario Kart for 16 hours straight, it's the best. So yes, you should buy a Nintendo Switch.
Okay. Basically, the audience question is about, we all heard of the Switch, right? How do you think about the way Switch used like as portable and bring people all together? Do you think this is kind of your ideal way to design the game? Is that game kind of fit your idea? Thank you.
I don't like the Nintendo Switch. No. No, I think I really love the idea of like the portability and pulling out the controllers. Like first of all, it's small. Like I put it in my backpack. It's not here right now. Maybe I should have brought it. If people had, I should have thought of that. We could just play Mario Kart instead of me talking. Yeah, I think I love the idea of having a console that's portable and then that people can just like start playing with each other really fast. I kind of like how, I don't know if you've played with the Nintendo Switch, but it has like controllers that you can like detach on the sides and take out. And the controllers, once you take them out, they're really bad. They're like terrible controllers. And there's something fun about that because it like almost makes it a little bit less serious. Right, like I would never play Overwatch with a controller. I would never play Overwatch with a controller. And if you play Overwatch on console, we need to have a serious conversation later. But nah, it's fine. Yeah, there's something very lighthearted about the Switch. Right, the screen is so small, and the controllers are kind of bad when it's split up, and it's so much fun. And I kind of like how Nintendo does its design, and for like, I spent about like 5 to 10 years not really loving Nintendo games, and I love them again because I feel like Nintendo is just very, very lighthearted about everything they do, and they don't take themselves that seriously. And while I do take some of my game playing very seriously, I think it's really cool that there's a space of games that's just like, it's Mario Kart, and there's an option so that you don't have to press the button to go forward. And also, Mario Kart has a thing that if you leave the road, it just puts you back on the road, right? So I can play with like, you know, my like 6-year-old niece, and we can have fun together. And yeah, I like that about how Nintendo's designing. I think it's as I said before, I want every kind of game, and I like the fact that there's some games that are very, very serious and hardcore, but I like how like lighthearted Nintendo's design style is, and I think that built even into the hardware of the Switch. Also, just like Zelda is so good. It's really good. So the fact that I can take Zelda on an airplane is just ridiculous. And sometimes I think of like 5-year-old me, and if I like went back, whatever, I'm 34 now, so if I went back 29 years and I was like, hey, you're gonna be able to play Zelda in the bathroom, I would have gone crazy. So yeah, it's pretty great. I love it.
还有问题吗？
我想请问一下，就是教授是觉得游戏可以促进人之间的交流，那同样是游戏之间交流情况，教授会比较认同的是竞争性的交流，还是合作性的交流？
So basically, like we all like the way the game bring everybody together. But which one you prefer, like a competitive one or the cooperative one? Like which way you think is more feasible, or you think is more ideal to bring people together?
I mean, I think they're both great ways of bringing people together. I like playing cooperative games a lot. It's pretty much the only games my wife and I play together. We play cooperative games. The last one we played was Overcooked. We played a bunch of Overcooked together. We really like playing these games that are very, very like stressful together, and we're both like always, those games where everything is always going wrong. I think it's like strangely good for our relationship. It should be bad for our relationship because it's like very stressful, but it works well. So like from like a philosophical and like point of view, I think like, oh, cooperative games are the best, but man, competitive games are so much fun. I love being mean to my friends, which is a bad thing, and I wish I were a better person, but I'm not. To tell you the truth, probably some of my favorite, so this game, Hokura, that I made is a 2-on-2 game. So it's 2 people against 2 people, and you need to have 4 people to play. And I really purposefully did that because I like the concept of like teaming up with someone against 2 other people. And it's like both, right? So you're cooperating, but then when the game is over, you're like, haha, I beat you, and I'm better than you are. And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's fun, and it's important to not take it seriously, right? Like it's important, I think it's important to be able to like make fun of your friends, but not really care. And you know what, like losing is fun too, so it's okay. So I think both is my answer. I love cooperative games too, so I like playing games with other people. I think it's really good.
那我们以热烈的掌声，谢谢 Professor Ramiro 今天的演讲。